everyone, and welcome back to the Pumpkin Patch. I'm your host, James Moser, and welcome back to Days of Halloween, our annual celebration of all things Halloween, mostly told through horror movies. I'm sure you're probably wondering why I'm dressed so loudly today, but this is Kofi Kingston, and this is the Haunted Mansion wallpaper. And why am I wearing that? We had a Muppets Haunted Mansion Escape the Undertaker Watch-a-Palooza, name subject to change. And we will be sharing that video with you as soon as we get a chance to edit it. But as you can probably tell, we have a lot of things that we have to cut for the month. So hopefully you're enjoying these episodes. But without further ado, let's jump right in and get the 4 movies and the 1 Halloween and other media selection. Our selection for the Halloween classic of the day goes to the 1998 film Halloween H20. Now, the other day on Days of Halloween, J.T. Wheatley selected Halloween 4 as his overlooked horror film. And whereas I do agree, it doesn't quite get as much attention as it does, I do feel like this particular entry is leaning more towards a classic, if for no other reason than it shows you just how to update to the modern era. Which was, 20 years ago. Mike gets another update 20 years later. Spoiler? Now, the subsequent sequel to Halloween H20 isn't very well respected, and it's got some problems. But it's not as bad as people make it out to be. So because of that, I'm not going to go so far as to say that Halloween H20 is really a blueprint. It's more or less like guidelines for you to kind of follow. This particular film sees Laurie Strode return to the landscape of Halloween. She had been missing since Halloween 2, and now she's back. But she's not in Haddonfield. She's actually at a boarding school in California. A boarding school that her son attends. She's changed her name to Carrie Tate. She's trying to live a brand new style of life, and she's trying to forget everything that happened that night that he came home. She's also suffering from a lot of PTSD from her experience from Michael Myers, aka her brother. And that's important because this particular film is the first time that we deviate from the timeline in the Halloween franchise, because this film is a direct sequel to Halloween 2. It ignores 4 through 6 completely. Michael is long thought dead, but as you and I know, you can't kill the boogeyman. Right? I thought we all knew that, right? I thought we were all on the same page with that. But, long story short, you know who shows up to town? Her brother Michael. He probably drove there, because he can drive. And he's going cross country, I guess, basically. Because that's what he does. So now it's up to Laurie to not only protect her son and all the kids at the boarding school, but also try to get some type of closure in her life and face Michael Myers for the first time. I guess technically this is the first time she's going head on with him. This story is very masterfully done, honestly, because of the witty dialogue, the updated circumstances, and that's important because Kevin Williamson, the writer of Scream, is the one that punched up this script. So it's that punchy kind of meta dialogue that we love from Scream now being transported over to Halloween. Even though the dialogue is newer and it's fresher, it doesn't change who Michael is. And he's still able to be the Shape 20 years later. And he's still able to feel relevant 20 years later. And surprisingly enough, a lot of the beats from this particular film end up getting absorbed into Halloween 2018 because you still have a traumatized Laurie Strode and how she's reacting and how she's living her life after the night in Haddonfield. Now, 40 years later. It's 20 years now. 60. It's a lot of time. The movie is fresh and it's fun, but it still feels like a Halloween movie, even though it's in California and no longer in Illinois, which doesn't actually matter because the first film was actually filmed in California. So, I guess they just didn't have to hide the palm trees this time? Fun fact, this is the first time Michael Myers is Michael Myers outside of Haddonfield. He's doing his killings in California this time. Oh man. That's a lot of dead mechanics along the way from Illinois to California. Ooh. Our selection for the overlooked horror film of the day goes to the 1999 film Ravenous. Alright, Pumpkin Patch, we got a fairly dark story on our hands this time. This film stars Guy Pearce as John Boyd. He's a lieutenant in the United States Army during the Mexican-American War. And he's currently been promoted to a base out in the middle of absolute nowhere. And why was he promoted? Well, it turns out that his unit actually ran into the opposing army, and he just didn't want to fight. He got really scared, and he just played dead. Literally in a pile of dead bodies. He just crawled up into the pile of dead bodies and pretended that he was also dead. And then, when they just assumed he was dead, he pops out and kills everybody. And he takes the base. Everyone else in his unit is dead. But, you know, he won the day. It's that particular fact that his commanding officer, once he finds out all the details, knows he can't really demote him. He did technically win, although he knows he can't trust him. So guess what? Out in the middle of nowhere with you, buddy. The idea is that he's sticking him with a motley crew of soldiers. I mean, not actually motley crew. That would be pretty awesome, although it is definitely not time related. But, you know, I'm just saying, motley crew is not bad. This is a motley crew, not the motley crew. And presumably, his commanding officer is just expecting him to just live his days out, just, you know, contemplating his cowardice, and just feeling embarrassed and feeling shame every single day of his life. At least, that was the plan, until Colonel Ives shows up, played by Robert Carlyle. And now this is when the story gets really interesting. I mean, it gets really bad. It's a horror movie, and it's gonna get terrible real fast. Because Ives has the curse of the Wendigo. The curse of the Wendigo is a Native American curse. It states that a man can have more power, more abilities, more strengths. He can overcome his weaknesses. He can overcome injuries and disease. All he has to do is eat the flesh of another man. However, in doing that, he invites a demonic spirit inside of him, transforming him into the Wendigo and giving him an insatiable need to continue to eat human flesh. This film is very darkly funny. It's very well performed. Robert Carlyle is absolutely amazing in this film. And after watching it, you really kind of feel like you want to explore this a little bit more. Here's this folklore just on the edge that hasn't been explored nearly enough, and honestly, not well enough when it is. But in this particular instance, it is very well done, it is fantastically told, and it is an amazing story. It is also a very supernatural movie, but at no point does it feel supernatural because it's set against the backdrop of war. So that has a weird way of making it more grounded, and it is beautifully done. But definitely check this movie out. Just know that if you enjoy it, it may cause an insatiable love of horror films that you will never get over. You know, all this talk of food got me kind of hungry. I'm really kind of... Am I a Wendigo? No. I just skipped lunch. Hey, Wheatley! What are you doing? What are you up to? Yeah, I'd like to have an old friend for lunch. And our first pick for the late night double feature picture show goes to The Ritual from 2017. Well, it looks like we got us a Netflix horror film sneaking on into the lineup. And who says that Netflix doesn't have great horror movies? I mean, it's mostly everybody that says that. But in this particular case, this is actually a really good one. Plus, if you need any more, we did our first Streaming Friday based around Netflix. There's some really good selections there. Kind of sort of hidden gem of a movie is about a group of friends who get together to go on a hike in the woods in Sweden. It's to kind of celebrate a friend who passed away a couple of months earlier, because that's what he really wanted to do, was go on a big hike with all of them in Sweden. So they're all getting back together to try to just do his final request. So they head on out to the woods in the middle of Sweden, and you know what? Welcome to a horror in the woods story, kids, because that's what we're doing. Sort of like Jason, sort of like Evil Dead, Cabin in the Woods. You're gonna go out in the woods? You probably, it's not safe. Don't go out in the woods. Why would you ever go out in the woods? There's nothing in the woods. That's the point of the woods. The film itself is very hard to describe without spoiling a lot of it. I guess the best thing I could say about it is it's sort of like Blair Witch, not as supernatural, and it's not found footage. It's very well shot. There's a lot of very beautiful scenery throughout the whole film that, as nightfall sets in, feels more like a prison than a freeing experience. It's actually quite beautiful. I highly recommend the film. I don't, however, recommend going to the woods. As I previously said, there is nothing in the woods. Don't go to the woods, Mr. Thoreau. There ain't nothing out there. And if you're gonna go on a trip, don't camp. Just get a hotel. Get a hotel. Be an adult. Get a hotel. Our next selection for the late night double feature picture show goes to the 2003 film Identity. Have you seen this movie? No, like, for real, seriously, go down in the comments and let me know. Have you actually seen this movie? Because I don't know hardly anyone that's ever seen this film, and I want to talk to someone about it. It's also a little odd because this movie's got a pretty good budget. It's a noir slasher film. It's kind of sort of based on an Agatha Christie story, and it's got some fairly well-known actors, John Cusack, Ray Liotta. It's surprising that more people haven't seen this film. But ultimately, the story follows two different plot lines at the exact same time. Plot line number one is about a murderer who's about to get sentenced at a trial. And plot line number two is about 10 complete strangers stuck in an isolated middle-of-nowhere motel. Which, I mean, that's a horror movie right there. I guess I did earlier say, just stay at a hotel. Stay at a hotel. Don't stay at a motel. Especially if that motel is themed after clowns. Definitely don't do that. But at the end of the day, that's really all I can say about it. And in fact, I may have said too much already. It's a noir film, so it has a lot of shadows, it's a lot of mystery, it's kind of a whodunit. It's well performed, but really you watch this for the story and watching it unfold. I highly recommend it, and I also highly recommend that if you watch it, let me know in the comments, because I want to be able to talk to someone about this thing. Our selection for the Halloween and Other Media goes to Penny Dreadful, the TV series. Alright, we finally get a chance to talk about my favorite TV show. I mean, is it my favorite TV show? I really like it. I mean, it's easily top 3. I don't know if it's my favorite TV show. It could be my favorite TV show. Let's see how this month progresses, and let's see if something else pops out. But right now, it's definitely top 3. Easily. Top 5, bottom, basement. This series is based on the idea of Penny Dreadfuls, which were mini books that sold for dirt cheap, usually for a penny, back in England in the 1800s. It dealt with a lot of lurid subject matter, had a lot of blood, had a lot of gore, and it may have possibly been the first ever fanfics and mockbusters, because they had a tendency to take storylines from actual books and just kind of incorporate them into these lurid little pulp novels. When they went out, they got some of the big boys. They got Varney the Vampire, which is the book that Bram Stoker read that inspired Dracula. They covered things like Spring-Heeled Jack and Sweeney Todd. So these things definitely had a pedigree, and that's the idea of the show. Taking these stories, these public domain characters, kind of mashing them up together and creating something spectacular. And much like the Penny Dreadfuls from the 1800s, Penny Dreadful was extremely popular. It was created by Sam Mendes, the guy that did a couple of the Bond movies, including Skyfall. But the basic idea is a kind of ever-evolving storyline involving this Alan Quatermain-like British nobleman explorer, a psychic, a cowboy, and a doctor. Everything that happens to them inside and outside of this group that they've created. And no, they don't have a name. This isn't like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Although it's sort of like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Especially since Dorian Gray joins them at some point. Yeah, I can definitely see those comparisons. That makes sense. But the initial story starts with Timothy Dalton's character, the aforementioned Alan Quatermain, Indiana Jones-style British nobleman explorer, trying to find his daughter, who's gone missing. So he's enlisted the help of Eva Green's psychic character, Josh Hartnett's cowboy, and a doctor to try to actually figure out where she is and what's going on. That story takes place ultimately over the span of 3 seasons. There's sort of a resolution after season 1, but it continues telling this overarching story that you can't help but wait for the next episode. But ultimately, you're going to have to watch it, and you're going to have to let me know if you enjoy it, because I think this show, like I said, top 10, easily top 10, top 25 TV shows I've ever seen in my entire life. Also, this is Josh Hartnett's second appearance today. He was Laurie Strode's son in H20. Of all the spooky stuff that you've done, Mr. Hartnett, I can tell you that I love your role of Ethan Chandler the most. So, sir, keep doing that. I absolutely adored it. And you were fantastic in this show. That does a pumpkin patch. That's the 4 movies and 1 Halloween and other media selection. It's usually right now where I come in and I tell you to do all the stuff. What I wanted to do is come on and let you know that today, this episode comes out on October the 9th. And I wanted to kind of share a story with you. I wanted to tell you about a guy who absolutely loved low-budget horror films. And he and I would talk all the time about low-budget horror films. He loved them, and I loved talking to him about it. It was a great kind of friendship over this stuff, but it was more than a friendship because it was a brotherhood. Because that particular man is Jessica's brother, Ben Jones. Ben Jones is probably one of the best, if not the best man I've ever met in my entire life. He was a stand-up dude. He always did right, never did the wrong thing. Sometimes it was easy, because if you didn't know what to do, whether it was right or wrong, just copy what he did, because you know you'd be in the right. Because, like I said, he always did the right thing. He was a great guy, and he was a fantastic brother, and my wife absolutely loved him. Today is October the 9th. It is the 7th year anniversary of Ben passing away. He left a wife, and he left 2 amazing kids, who we've actually had on the channel. Sarah and Nathaniel, his wife Jamie, and Jessica, and their brother Adam, and their mom Kim all survive him, and we all try to survive without having him in our lives. He was an amazing guy, and I just wanted to take a second and say that we miss you, Ben. We know that there's plenty of movies on this list that you would love to watch, and you would make fun of, and you would laugh about, and then you would just watch again and again and again, and we'd talk about it constantly. But just know that we're still having those conversations in my head. But we miss you, Ben. We love you. Expert Lindley. It's also really weird that no one Expert Lindley. I don't know what Lindley means, but it's Expert Lindley. That's about all the prestige, all of it. That's a definite military move, right? Guy Pearce as. But let's just get straight on in there. John Boyd. That's his name. We hope you've been enjoying this. Remember that. There'll be a test later. Use this. Also, it's not going to be on a test. So it has this. This is not a movie. This is a TV show. I forgot the 3rd one. This series gets. Comedy comes in 3s. It did. That was terrible. Oh, that was it. Huh. Oh, fairly short entry.